Hello, comrades. Good day. It's I always say that because it's true. It's a great pleasure to be with you. Every time I am with you, I learn more because I studied before I come. Because for us, whether you are in Europe, whether you are in Latin America, we don't have much education on Indonesian history and and um, uh, and nowadays we don't have much access to Indonesia. Even right now, the interest is growing because Indonesia got to the BRICS, and Indonesia it's having also an agreement with the European Union. So that's why people are more interested in Indonesia. But unless you were either from Portugal, well, where my family comes from, or from the Netherlands, you usually don't study much on Indonesia. But that's changing. You want to translate, Surya?
Ya, eh, sebagai pembukaan tadi Marcelo menyampaikan bahwa dia selalu senang dan sangat menarik ketika setiap kali ada kelas dengan teman-teman serikat di Indonesia. Karena menurut dia bahwa Marcelo tidak punya eh, edukasi ataupun informasi yang cukup dan selalu ingin menggali tentang Indonesia. Apalagi saat ini Indonesia bergabung dengan BRICS, dengan European Union, dan ini membuat semakin eh, orang-orang di tingkat global semakin tertarik dengan Indonesia. Apalagi misalnya Marcelo yang berasal dari Portugal ataupun orang-orang di Belanda, ini tidak dapat belajar banyak karena sebelumnya tidak punya informasi yang cukup tentang Indonesia, tapi sekarang semuanya berubah. Orang-orang semakin mengenal Indonesia.
So the idea nowadays, the Brazilian education, and that's why my teacher, the professor Sergio Montalvão, he said, the coordinator of this course, he said that it's very interesting to have a class from Indonesia, the class from Cameroon, and the class from Italy outside Latin America. They are the big stars of this course because we will bring knowledge to Brazilian university and academia, and we hope to exchange information with you for future programs. And I hope Surya can help me in Timor East, in Malaysia, in Brunei, in Singapore, and in Thailand, all the Asian countries. We can, for next year or maybe later, we can bring these countries uh, from Indonesian perspective. So Indonesia is the biggest country in Asia, in the ASEAN. So we would the next step would be looking into these workers from an Indonesian perspective and bringing other perspectives together in the ASEAN perspective, not just government and bosses' vision, but also workers' vision. So I give back to you, Surya.
Ya, eh, Profesor Marcelo menyampaikan bahwa hasil eh, penilaian dia, terutama dengan profesor di Brazil, koordinator kursus union ini, intinya menarik, sangat menarik dan sangat kelas di Indonesia ini seperti di Kamerun, Italia, ini adalah uh, peserta yang sangat menarik dalam kursus ini karena kelak membawa dampak yang baik dalam dunia akademisi di Brazil. Nah, ke depan harapannya Timur Timur, Malaysia, Brunei, Singapura, Thailand, dan seluruh negara di Asia Tenggara ikut bergabung karena Indonesia adalah yang terbesar di ASEAN. Ke depan kita akan pelajari semuanya dari perspektif Indonesia atau sebaliknya bahkan dari perspektif pekerja ataupun serikat pekerja di Indonesia.
And the reason I say that is because Indonesia is the only Southeast country in the G20, and Indonesia it has the same status in BRICS than Brazil, China, Russia, South Africa, and India. So Indonesia, its importance now and the future, it has to be acknowledged not just for Latin America, but by the whole world. And that's why we are here for this class. We are beginning, we are preparing uh, what I call the core of organizing in our course. It's made of three classes, so it's grassroots union work, it's trade union councils when we achieve to do that, but and it deals with micro, macro, and macro, micro power and strategic power, um, but also the culture, labor culture, and the unions and popular front. So these three classes, they are part of the core of this course.
Uh, Alasan kelas Indonesia selalu menarik adalah karena Indonesia adalah satu-satunya negara di Asia Tenggara yang bergabung dengan G20, lalu juga statusnya sama saat ini dengan negara-negara yang tergabung dengan BRICS, Brazil, Rusia, India, dan lain sebagainya, termasuk Afrika Selatan. Jadi Indonesia sangat penting posisinya di kancah global. Nah, ini harus diakui oleh juga seluruh dunia. Untuk itu kenapa kita di sini untuk belajar bersama, mempelajari dasar, hal-hal paling dasar untuk mengorganisir kekuatan pekerja. Apakah itu kerja-kerja akar rumput, terkait dengan hal-hal mikro-makro atau makro-mikro, dan lain sebagainya. Jadi ini adalah fondasi untuk kerja-kerja mengorganisir gerakan serikat.
So I hope this class helps you, give you tools for organizing from the grassroots union work perspective. So it's on one side agitation and propaganda, or organizing, if you use another way of saying, construction of micro macro, because you're always dealing with society from a local perspective, but you also, as a docker or as a strategic worker, you would look for the global perspective also. So it's a macro, micro, dockers, and strategic power.
Ya, saya harap kelas ini bisa membantu teman-teman, terutama terkait dengan tools dasar untuk mengorganisir, terutama dari perspektif akar rumput. Apakah itu soal agitasi, propaganda, mikro-makro, karena tools ini berhubungan langsung dengan masyarakat ataupun sebaliknya, teman-teman pekerja yang terhubung langsung dengan masyarakat.
Próximo, Patrícia. So I was telling Surya how I see, the more I study Indonesian history from the workers' perspective, but for a global perspective, I see that Indonesia is very different to other South East Asian countries in a way that is very similar to Latin American countries. Very, very similar. In the dependency and political and economical dependency. That's why I divide the history of Indonesia until 1945, until 1967-68, when Sukarno is replaced by Suharno. And then, and all these ideas that are in this part, the development that we have between 68 and what it's called in Indonesia the democratic phase. So it's very recent, but I believe that Indonesia was always looking for its own democracy and its own people's power and labor power in its own perspective. So looking for its own way of doing things, and I believe it's very in this way. That's what makes Indonesia very similar to Latin America, because they are, in some cases, not all, but in some cases, the government is trying to have a sovereignty perspective towards the globe, not just to be non-aligned, not just to follow the values of Bandung, that is very, everybody knows in the world, everywhere you go, if you say Bandung meeting, people will know it's a non-aligned meeting, but not just because of it, because Indonesia wants to develop, Indonesia wants to be independent and non-aligned, and Indonesia wants to prosper its own way with sovereignty. And this is very interesting because it's the same way that the Latin American countries are trying to do for 200 years since their independence. Majority of Latin American countries were independent 150 years before Indonesia. So that's why even if we got our independency and our dependency late, we can struggle to have these three things: sovereignty, finding its own way to prosperity, and having the development of the country, and hopefully with labor participation and people's participation. And this is that makes the history of Indonesia and the history of Latin American countries very, very similar. I
Oke,
give it back to you because I will now go to the way that. But I would like you to put emphasis in that, Surya, because this is very interesting for me because I didn't know that, and I'm still
oke,
learning. I'm still learning.
oke. Jadi satu hal yang menarik yang disampaikan oleh Prof. Marcelo adalah bahwa Indonesia berbeda dari negara ASEAN lainnya. Dan bahkan hal yang Marcelo menarik untuk dipelajari adalah Indonesia sangat mirip dengan Amerika Latin, terutama dalam hal politik dan ekonomi. Seperti Marcelo mempelajari dari tahun 45, 67, 68 pada saat pergantian Soekarno ke Soeharto, bahwa di tahun-tahun tersebut ada perkembangan yang menarik soal wajah demokrasi di Indonesia. Indonesia selalu mencari akar demokrasi dan juga berujung pada kekuatan pekerja. Selalu seperti ini. Marcelo melihatnya seperti itu. Inilah yang membuat Indonesia sama dengan Amerika Latin. Bukan hanya soal KTT non-blok, di mana warga dunia ini kenal Bandung, dimanapun menyebut Bandung, ini terkenal karena KTT. Tapi bukan hanya itu. Namun Indonesia selalu ingin berkembang, merdeka, menjadi non-blok, dan sangat pro dengan kemakmuran rakyat. Ini sama, yang Marcelo lihat sama dengan Amerika Latin, bahwa selama 200 tahun mencari hal dasar ini dan selalu berjuang untuk hal dasar ini. Walaupun sudah 150 tahun sebelumnya, negara Amerika Latin merdeka sebelum Indonesia. Intinya selalu berjuang, dan kemiripan perjuangan ini ada di tiga hal, baik dalam hal kedaulatan, kemakmuran, dan juga kemajuan daripada suatu negara. Dalam hal ini Indonesia ataupun kemiripannya dengan Amerika Latin. Tentunya dengan keterlibatan pekerja dan juga keterlibatan rakyat.
But the idea is, how can we benefit from this? So I spoke about sovereignty. I spoke about making our people to progress. So people in Indonesia may progress because of these policies of industrialization, nationalization in many ways. So the government is being brave in this sense that because these companies, they are in Indonesia since 1966 and 67, and they were openly working in Indonesia without any obstacles. And so sovereignty and prosperity and non-alignment, how can we make the Indonesian people, and especially dockers and strategic workers, airline workers, train workers, truck drivers, how can we make these workers benefit from this prosperity? Because that's the main challenge that we have. It doesn't matter if the country prosper. It doesn't matter if the country is sovereign. It doesn't matter if the country is non-aligned, if it cannot touch the grassroots. And that's why we must be reaching ourselves, pointing that the government is making change, but the state must be sovereign, and the companies must submit to the wills of the state, meaning workers and society. And that's why we should not speak about resistance. We should speak about a defense that we must build. So building the defense of organized port and strategic labor means sharing this prosperity, sharing this sovereignty, sharing this non-alignment. We should think about prosperity. And prosperity is very simple to understand. You ask any worker, he will tell you about labor, labor salaries, labor rights, decent work, working and health and safety conditions, mental health. We will have a class for that with Patricia. Uh, Professor Patricia will take this class. So these are the issues that we have to value. But also when we go and buy things, how it's inflation, how it's the community, how it's pollution, how it's environment. So these issues are linked to prosperity, are linked to sovereignty, are linked to non-alignment, and are linked to our role in society. This defense is this. So I give you back the word, the so you can have the main explanation, Surya, please.
Oke. Jadi seperti yang Prof. Marcel sampaikan sebelumnya bahwa idenya terkait dengan apakah itu kebijakan industrialisasi, nasionalisasi, bagaimana membuat rakyat ataupun kaum pekerja ini menjadi progresif, dan bagaimana kita diuntungkan dari hal-hal itu. Karena menurut Marcelo banyak perkembangan sejak 1966, bagaimana investasi dibuka besar-besaran tanpa ada halangan. Namun tantangannya adalah bagaimana rakyat diuntungkan, terutama dari sisi pekerja. Ini adalah tantangan utamanya. Walaupun ada kedaulatan, kemakmuran, dan juga gerakan non-blok, tapi kalau tidak melibatkan grassroots, ini adalah suatu nilai yang hilang. Makanya kita sebagai pekerja harus memperkaya diri kita, sehingga bukan hanya soal soal memberontak gitu, tetapi bahasa yang Marcelo gunakan adalah bagaimana kita mempertahankan diri, membangun defense atau pertahanan. Artinya bagaimana kita membagi kemakmuran kita, berbagi kedaulatan, dan juga gerakan non-blok ini. Pemahaman yang sederhana dari sisi pekerja terhadap hal-hal yang disampaikan sebelumnya adalah bagaimana soal gaji layak, upah layak, hidup layak, hak-hak yang dipenuhi, kesehatan, keamanan. Ini adalah contoh isu-isu yang bernilai dari sisi pekerja. Adapun isu lainnya juga mencakup misalnya inflasi, polusi, isu kemasyarakatan, yang mana ini terkait dengan kemakmuran, kedaulatan, dan juga gerakan non-blok tersebut. Inilah soal pertahanan yang akan kita bangun.
So the reason I really believe that Indonesia will achieve prosperity in next 10, 20 years. But the question is, will this prosperity will go to the people? And will the strategic workers, especially the dockers, will they participate actively in bringing benefits and rights and salary and organizing tools to its members and to its leadership? And the way to do that, the way I chose to explain you the way how to achieve that, is dividing these three classes that I call defense. So defense, not resistance, but defense, building defense. And first of all, the class today would be the building dockers and strategic councils, because the maximum strength that we may have is when we achieve to put an organized body between members and the leadership. So we all know that when we are leaders, when trade union leaders, we see in an assembly those who are more organized than the others, and then we have a mass of membership. These cadres, these political cadres, they should be organized in political councils, in political group studies, in political groups. When they're mature enough, we call them strategic councils or political councils or trade union councils or just councils when they are mature. So through organized port and strategic work, through working groups, we will build communication groups for training and political work. So understanding Indonesian society is a political work within the port and the strategic councils. So I say again, it's a body, it's a non-legal body, because you don't need any authorization by the government or by the bosses to build councils. They are fluid bodies. So you just need to organize them. And they would organize themselves not against the trade union, but in partnership as part of the people's power that we build. So they're not just members and not just leadership, but you have a body in between. In between. This is very, very important. Then we will study in another class port and strategic culture. And we will affirm the specific and shared nature of port and the strategic work, the fruit of voluntary cooperation and solidarity developed since immemorial times. And at last, we will speak about popular fronts, when we speak with society, when we put our issues for society, for the defense of port and strategic workers, building a solidarity network for the rights of port and strategic workers. So this is the big issue for the second quarter of the 21st century. If we got to share prosperity in Indonesia, we need to be prepared for the next second quarter, where I believe that Indonesia will be prospered. But will this prosperity touch the majority of the workers, especially the strategic workers, or it will remain in the 200 main families that rule Indonesia? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. So we propose these three main areas of construction for the defense of organized port and the strategic work, so we can build, on one hand, sovereignty, on the other hand, prosperity, but also people's and popular power. So I give it back to you, Surya.
Ya, saya punya alasan untuk percaya bahwa Indonesia akan mencapai kemakmuran dalam 10-20 tahun ke depan. Namun pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana ini jatuh ke tangan atau menyentuh lebih banyak kepada pekerja dan juga rakyat. Pertanyaannya adalah apakah atau bagaimana kita berpartisipasi. Nah, kelas hari ini adalah bagaimana diskusinya untuk membangun sebuah pertahanan defense, bukan memberontak, tapi bagaimana membangun pertahanan. Jadi lewat semacam dewan serikat pekerja, dewan buruh, dewan strategis, sehingga dari dewan ini ada jembatan antara pemimpin dan juga anggota ataupun grassroots. Karena apa? Kader-kader ini harus diorganisir dalam perspektif politik, sehingga ketika suatu organisasi mencapai level mature atau dewasa, maka perlu adanya dewan buruh atau dewan strategis. Karena ini juga terkait dengan budaya pelabuhan, terkait dengan bagaimana kita membela anggota. Uh, Kalau bahasa Marcelo itu ini adalah non-legal body, artinya tidak perlu otorisasi pemerintah ataupun manajemen, tetapi ini memang organisasi atau dewan yang dibentuk dari pekerja dan untuk pekerja. Uh, untuk itu, bagaimana kita membangun jaringan solidaritas, ini adalah pertanyaan atau isu terbesar di abad 21 ini. Membagi kemakmuran, membagi kesejahteraan, dan bagaimana kita mempersiapkan diri kita ke depan. Apakah kesejahteraan ini akan menyentuh banyak pihak atau hanya jatuh kepada beberapa orang, terutama orang kaya di Indonesia. Inilah pertanyaan penting untuk kita semua.
So before going to the technical part, I would like to say that we need to study Indonesia. We all need to study Indonesia in a way that, of course, that you will be my teachers in Indonesia. But we all need Indonesian studies to understand its economy, its prosperity, its sovereignty, its non-alignment. We need to understand that when we discuss with the workers, because we cannot start talking about trade union with the workers that we want to organize. One of the main reasons that we do not organize is that we speak only about trade union interests, and we must speak about common prosperity for the nation, common prosperity for the working class, common prosperity for Indonesia. This has to be the locomotive of our speech and to listen a lot what the workers want to say about this and about other things. This is very important because people usually put everything in the corruption basket. But you must go out of this basket in order to understand the full meaning of what is to be Indonesia. So everything is corrupt. Indonesia will never be a prosperous country. So these things, I'm just giving examples. These things we are not there to deny, but we are there to put in another perspective that will link with our main objectives. That is to have more members, that is to have more cadres, that is to have more councils, that is to have good trade union leadership with renovation of the cadres, so always preparing the next leadership, and with political power in order to press the government on one side, but especially to press the companies, because our main role is to help society to put the interests of these companies, of these 200 families, of these main countries, in the interest of society and workers, plan the economy, project the economy, and raise people's power, labor power. I give it back to you, Surya.
Ya, sebelum Prof. Marcelo lebih jauh melangkah ke hal teknis, Marcelo mengatakan kita perlu belajar tentang Indonesia. Dan teman-teman di sini yang hadir di sini akan menjadi guru bagi Marcelo untuk bagaimana mengerti ekonomi, mengerti tentang kesejahteraan, mengerti tentang politik non-blok daripada Indonesia. Karena menurut Marcelo kita tidak bisa mulai berbicara isu soal serikat pekerja jika kita maksudnya merasakan esensi daripada serikat pekerja jika kita hanya berbicara hanya sektoral kepentingan serikat pekerja, tapi bagaimana kita berbicara tentang kesejahteraan secara umum, baik untuk rakyat maupun untuk Indonesia. Inilah ide untuk lokomotif perubahannya. Karena suka tidak suka banyak hal korup di kanan kiri kita, namun bagaimana kita bisa membangun kepemimpinan dan kekuatan politik, karena peran kita adalah bagaimana menolong rakyat dan bagaimana gerakan kita atas nama kepentingan orang banyak, sehingga ini bisa meningkatkan kekuatan atau leverage daripada serikat ataupun rakyat.
So, of course, I will give the Western perspective of the Orange in the history of modern port workers organization. I will leave it to you in a working group, the first working group, to determine when the history of and the origin of modern pork workers in Indonesia, in the ASEAN region, when did it start? How was it? In the West, it's since Greek and Roman times that it is organized. But I put the origins of modern port organization, the history of the Paris strike square. If you go to Paris, you see a strike square. And Paris has a river Seine. And the Seine is a river that had a port because Paris was like London, protected, not undercovered by the sea, but it was inside in order to protect in the medieval and the ancient times. So the harbor would be a protected harbor inside a river. And in this river had a harbor. And in this harbor had a square. And it's called the Place de la Grève. And it's the shared history of port workers' struggle. Workers' Council, like port and strategic councils, have their origins in the organization of labor councils, like in the port of Genoa in 1900s, I will explain. The councils, as a skilled mass organization, will be the most effective form of communication for educating for action. Why this? Because in this Place of Grève, the workers, the dock workers, would meet every day to look for work. And as they would meet, they would know themselves, they would know their problems, they would know their rights, they would know their struggle. And the same harbor started strike. Grève means strike in French. So the history of the harbor is very linked with the history of organizing for rights, for salaries, for prosperity through the struggle, through the strikes. In Italy, of course, it's very old, but in Genoa, Gramsci studied the Dockers councils, and these Dockers councils come from the Dockers culture. They evolved from its natural work, and the natural work evolved, and then Gramsci studied these councils in the strike in 1900s in Genoa and took to Turin and made a very known book about labor councils from the Dockers perspective and Dockers experience. So these councils are as a skilled mass organization. So you have members on one side, you have the board of direction of a trade union, of a federation on the other side, and you have these councils as organized workers, not just members and non-members, but then when you interview, when you know these workers, you know they are different because they are double organized. They are organized in the union, but they are organized also in the council. And it shows through history of labor organizing history as a form of communication and education for action. In-depth research is needed on the history of port and strategic workers in Indonesia, as I said. So this will be our first working group for you, because we have been doing working groups here, but I give it to you now. What's the origin of Indonesia organizing? How it was organized before? I gave you an example in Italy and in France, or prior in Roman and Greek times. And when I say Roman and Greek times, I say that the Roman soldiers were the ones that were most paid in Roman times. But when the dockers, when they had prosperity, when the city prospered, when the part of the empire prospered, the dockers, it's proved, they had the same salaries as the soldiers because they were organized. So the organization in the West is very old, it's from Roman times. But this history is needed in Indonesia. So verifying the three-part division, complete freedom for employers, it's one part, partial legislation, and the new complete freedom for employers under neoliberalism at the time of drafting port and strategic legislation. What is the degree of control and management of the workforce by workers? This is very keen for dockers. How strong is the port or strategic culture, when I speak of airline and other workers, in achieving good wages, rights, decent organized work, and distribution of wealth created in the port by the port labor power? And I give it back to you, Surya. But the emphasis is like we need to study Indonesian history. As I spoke with you about the West and the global history, we need to specify. In the future, we will study Chinese or the Asian countries, Japanese, but we need to specify Indonesian dockers and strategic workers history in order to understand better the situation today. Give it back to you.
Oke, Marcelo akan memulai working group pertama. Pertanyaannya adalah kapan sejarah serikat di Indonesia pertama kali terbentuk. Marcelo memberikan contoh di dua negara, pertama di Paris, di sana ada namanya Paris Strike Square, Place de la Grève. Intinya Paris Strike Square ini di mana di Sungai Seine ini ada pelabuhan yang dilindungi sungai dan di dalamnya ada lapangan. Nah, di Paris Strike Square ini para pekerja bertemu setiap hari dan disinilah pertama kalinya para pekerja melakukan aksi kolektif untuk menolak upah murah ataupun ketidakadilan di tempat kerja. Di sisi lain ada juga sejarah di Italia, di Genoa, di mana ada salah satu tokoh terkenal namanya Gramsci. Dia mempelajari tentang Dewan Buruh, di mana ada satu bukunya yang cukup dikenal, yaitu tentang Dewan Buruh itu sendiri. Dan ini semua murni dari perspektif pekerja, sehingga di situ ada kerja-kerja organisir secara double, di mana ada serikat dan juga ada dewan. Intinya riset terhadap sejarah ini sangat dibutuhkan dan kita butuh mempelajari histori atau sejarah di Indonesia. Nah, pertanyaannya adalah tadi kapan pertama kali sejarah pengorganisiran buruh di Indonesia?
So if I look to that, look, when we unionize someone, when we make someone a member, it means he's organized. Ask yourselves. It means that he's at the beginning of organizing. Okay, he will contribute to the trade union. Okay, he will get news from the union. Okay, he is a member of the union. But what is the level of the conscience? And that's why Surya and comrades, all the comrades here, the councils are the ultimate tool for organizing. But we start talking about membership. We start talking about participation. We start talking about rights. We start talking about country. And these things will evolve and deepen in the trade unions assembly and the trade unions communication and in the discussions within the councils. And you can call anything when it begins. You can call the group the working group, because usually dockers they work in groups. So you can call working group. You can call study group when the trade union organizes a study group. You can call, but when they evolve in conscience, in labor conscience, in country's conscience, then you will in the Indonesian conscience. How can we become strong? How can we get good wages, rights, decent and organized work, distribution of wealth created, complete organization, formation, control when they hire people, when they fire people? These are the things that we need to discuss. And the councils are the mature, the mature phases of that. And that's what I want to emphasize, because this was, since the orange, ours is a collective work. When we were discussing, no, Surya, about the truck drivers, we were saying that when you work isolated is a different culture that when you work together. And as strategic workers, the majority work together. And the more together they evolve, the more councils they have in order to discuss the important issues that have to be addressed by workers, by communities, by the cities, and by nation and the region and global. So I give it back to you, Surya. Próximo, Patrício.
Uh, Salah satu poin penting adalah bagaimana ketika seseorang atau anggota kita menjadi anggota serikat, bukan hanya soal dia akan berkontribusi terhadap serikat, tapi bagaimana pertanyaannya level kesadaran dari anggota tersebut. Dan itu juga berlaku untuk teman-teman yang hadir di kelas hari ini, bagaimana level kesadaran daripada teman-teman. Jadi kita mulai berbicara dari hal-hal keanggotaan, partisipasi, memperjuangkan hak-hak, dan bahkan berkontribusi atau memperjuangkan dalam tahapan aturan atau legislasi ataupun undang-undang dalam level negara. Nah, intinya adalah bagaimana kita menjadi kuat dengan kesadaran yang semakin meningkat. Nah, inilah poin daripada diskusi kita. Karena sejak dulu kita adalah kekuatan kolektif. Seperti yang Marcelo dan saya juga diskusi sebelumnya bahwa ada perbedaan antara serikat supir truk di seluruh dunia dengan buruh pelabuhan, di mana supir truk ini, teman-teman serikat supir truk ini, dia lebih individual daripada budaya kolektif pekerja pelabuhan ataupun pekerja strategis lainnya. Nah, isu-isu ini yang mana penting untuk diselesaikan dan bagaimana kita membangun kolektivitas lewat peningkatan level kesadaran kita.
So it brings us to the technical part of our class today. What to do? What to do? It needs a newspaper. It needs a flyer. It needs a collective organizer of the port. It needs a person, but it needs a tool. You should not speak to a worker without the trade union's newspaper, without a trade union's message, concrete message in your hand that you can give for those who want to receive. And I know that in the East, we use the two hands to give people something in sign of education. So for those who want to receive our message, the written message will be stronger than our words, but also to listen to what the workers have to say. So we need a white paper and a pen, and to always carry our law, our trade unions collective bargain agreement, to explain our dockers law, our maritime law, truck drivers law, airline workers law, rail workers law, bus drivers law. We need to have a basic knowledge of our law, how it was. We will have a specific class on that, but how it was, the law, how it is, and how we want to be the law. The law has to satisfy our interests because we are community, because we are majority, because we are the country, we are Indonesia. So the law has to satisfy our interests. We are the majority. And that's why we have to be always connected with society, with the people's power, with the social movement, with the other workers. And Surya and other comrades, unity is very important. When we go to the grassroots and there are 3, 4, 5, 6 unions, all of them speaking different languages, different words, different religions, different messages, it will be chaos. We need one message. Sometimes it will be more radical. Sometimes we will be less radical. We have to go in the rhythm of the majority. When the majority goes fast, we don't keep back them back. When the majority goes slow, we try to put a little emphasis. Let's speed up. Let's, be more energetic. But we have to be with them, the beginning and the end, because our main goal is to organize. For some people, we will start speaking about the country and about the macro. For others, we start speaking about the micro, about the trade union, about the rights. But the micro and the micro must be combined. You must be rich inside as trade union leaders. So that's why you must study more Indonesia. You must study more your unity. You must study more your own newspaper, the one that you handle to the workers. Because the newspaper can mobilize the masses around important, urgent, and historical issues. That's why I spoke about Indonesia, because these are historical issues. And then we will have an urgent matter, then you will speak. And what is important for us? What is important for us as dockers, as airline workers, other strategic, what is important for us? We need to separate these importances when we speak. That's why we need to train our trade union leaders. That's why we are all here, in order to educate ourselves. I learn from Indonesia, you learn from my perspective, and we combine this knowledge because we need to make this prosperity of Indonesia to go back to its bottom, to its democracy, to its base. We need to democratize the prosperity of Indonesia. And this is very important. So the Dockers' most usual need is a political education in all aspects and respects, where the political demands coincide with the needs of the broader democratic movement. So when your Dockers' perspective coincide with the needs of the broader democratic movement, It's meaning that you are going the right direction. You have more members, you have more cadres, you have more quality on your trade unions leadership, and you have more quality on your power in relation to the government and your power in relation with the bosses and in relation to the submission to the bosses of the needs of Indonesian society and Indonesian government. And the government is not will be a government for the rich and the powerful. We will need a check and balance for these 200 families. The difference between victory and defeat lies in the judicious use of the media, not just the newspaper, not just paperwork, but you know how a propaganda, a fake news can damage a country in your country. In this way, it's very similar to Latin America. How the CIA worked inside Indonesian history so much, and how the Western media and the Western interests and the Western propaganda damage Indonesian history so much. And then that's why you have to have a judicious use of the media in order to have your own perspective. The ultimate outcome of struggles is not the immediate victory. It's not to have 100% of trade union members. Of course, that we do want that. I don't know any Dockers union that has 100%, but I know many that has 90, 95, 85, 70. 70, if you show me 70, I will give you a big kiss and a big hug, because it's an excellent. But I would say that I work, comrades, with a perspective 757. It means 70%, 7 out of 10 support, 50% of unionized, if we are lucky, 51% of unionized members, and 70% when we want to go to strike. 7 out of 10 must support the strike, not to be the other way, because otherwise we will rape our own members, saying that we want to go to strike and they don't want to. So this is not good. So we need this. It's not mathematics, but that 757 is a good way of seeing it. So the judicious use of the media, the ultimate outcome of the struggles is not the immediate victory. It's not a strike, it's not membership, but the ever-growing unity of the dockers and the strategic workers. We need unity in Indonesia and effective and ongoing communication. Communication to make the prosperity of Indonesia to be shown and understood, and then that we have to have a share of this prosperity. I give it back to you, Surya. Thank you.
Ya, oke. Dalam hal ini, Prof. Marcelo membahas bagaimana penggunaan media sebagai tools untuk mengorganisir secara kolektif, di mana bahan-bahan tulisan, menurut Marcelo, ini dapat memobilisasi anggota ataupun massa seputar isu-isu penting, urgent, dan juga hal yang bersejarah. Karena kebutuhan paling mendesak bagi para pekerja adalah pendidikan politik dalam segala hal, di mana tuntutan politik ini akan bertemu di tengah dengan kebutuhan gerakan demokratis yang lebih luas. Jadi, menurut Marcelo adalah perbedaan antara kemenangan dan kekalahan ini terletak pada penggunaan media yang bijaksana. Jadi hasil akhir daripada perjuangan bukanlah sebuah kemenangan instan, melainkan hal yang paling penting adalah persatuan yang terus ditumbuhkan di antara serikat, di antara federasi, di antara konfederasi, bukan hanya di pelabuhan, namun juga di bandara, kereta api, dan juga sektor-sektor strategis lainnya. Dan komunikasi yang efektif serta berkesinambungan ini juga penting. Jadi kita tidak bisa berkomunikasi tanpa ada bahan-bahan tulisan dalam bentuk flyer, dalam bentuk koran, bahkan ketika ada tuntutan yang sampai berujung pada aturan undang-undang di mana ini penting untuk memenuhi harapan anggota ataupun orang banyak, sehingga isu-isu ini tetap terkoneksi dengan gerakan yang lebih luas. Tadi pentingnya mempelajari sejarah adalah salah satunya tadi yang Prof. Marcelo sampaikan, bagaimana kita tidak tahu banyak ketika CIA bekerja di dalam pemerintahan Indonesia. Itu juga salah satu sejarah yang mesti kita pelajarin. Lalu Marcelo menyampaikan satu hal lagi yang menurut saya menarik adalah bagaimana aturan 757, prinsip yang dipegang Marcelo, 757, di mana intinya mungkin yang pro dengan serikat itu sekitar mungkin 10%, 85%-nya acuh atau masa mengambang, dan 5%-nya terlibat secara alami. Sehingga ketika kita ingin mempengaruhi secara politik terhadap 85% ini adalah kerja-kerja yang harus kita lakukan. Jadi intinya bagaimana mengembangkan atau menumbuhkan persatuan dan juga mengembangkan sebuah komunikasi yang efektif lewat media sebagai alat untuk mengorganisir secara kolektif.
Well, when we look at our tasks, what to do, it's we should look at to ourselves as organizers, but we are also teachers when we and learners when we are dealing with the workers and fighters. You look at me as a teacher, but in reality, I'm an organizer. It's what I love to do. If I were with you, I would be like thinking concrete answers and questions for organizing better the dockers, the maritime, the airline workers, the rail workers, the truck drivers, the bus drivers, the metro workers. So all this petrol, industrial workers, all these, the miners, strategic workers that are part of Indonesia. And that's what we have to do. I mean, you are my teachers when you talk about Indonesia. And the second working group that we need is how to organize our working places. After studying our history, how can we organize better our working places? We need to think about that. We are discussing some tools, but every harbor, every dock, every strategic place, every airport will need a specific study. And that was our third class, a method, a thought. We need all this in order to progress to organizing. But that class, it's about tools for that. How can we better organize? And then we have to know where we are organized, the people that we organize, ourselves, our members, our council members, our board of director, our working groups. Próximo, Patrício. This is important because when we discuss that, we have to think about communication and information for political education and training. And when I say political, it means Indonesia. Of course, when you read What to Do, you think about Lenin, because that's his book. But I want to think about Indonesian perspective, what to do in Indonesian political education and class conscience and prosperity perspective. So we need to speak simple, direct, and comprehensive communication. That's what we need with the working group on political, economic, and local and national issues. Short sentences and clear, illustrated ideas. That's why we need a good newspaper, because we need simple, direct, and comprehensive communication with the working group, with our members. I'm talking about working group here because you've been doing with your members and with your political board of direction. I'm introducing a third tool. That's the working group. I call it councils. but it can be a working group, it can be a studying group, it can be a natural uh, working group that you have in your working days, in your grassroots work every day. But we need to speak, we need this communication on local and national issues uh, uh, through short sentences and clear illustrated ideas. People must understand what you're saying. And when I say that, I love this concept that you have in your history. That is, I don't know if I will say right, as you said, very right. Place de la Grève, Surya. Now I will try my way of saying Punchasila. Punchasila is an ecumenic Indonesian way of looking at religion. We need this example from Indonesia to the world. When we are trade union members, when our trade union members, when our trade union working groups, when our trade union leaders speak, they must not speak as a Muslim perspective, as a Christian perspective, as a Buddhist perspective, as a Hindu perspective, but as a Punch Shasila perspective. We need to do that, and this is very important because we don't want to separate our members in different languages, in different cultures, and especially in different religions. We are all Indonesians, and we need to all be organized inside this great tool that is a trade union. And that's why it's so important. And so this is just one way to illustrate an idea. So I'm here. I'm maybe because the majority of the population is Muslim. I'm Muslim, but I understand your perspective. It's not but. I'm Muslim and I understand your perspective. I understand your point because I'm Indonesian, and our country is a like country, is a secular country, is a country that the constitution doesn't say that one religion is above the other, so we must respect each other. And I'm just using this thing about religion to show that we can be in local and national issues and have short sentences, clear and illustrated ideas when we speak. We from the punch. Oh my God, the punch. I will keep this name because I love it because it can be used anywhere in the world. Punch Shasila. It's a very important tool, not just for Indonesia, for the whole world. But this is also a short, clear, illustrated idea. So going also understanding the profile and facets of the working class. Usually, we will have 10% resistant to our ideas, 85% indifferent. I mean, they are in the trade union because we have a good doctor or good lawyer or good benefit or because we are giving them laws, but then you have 5% naturally engaged. These are the ones that we must organize in the councils. These naturally engaged, they are not in the board of direction, but they're naturally engaged. And they will mobilize the 85%, and the 10% will come along. So it has a priority. Studying the profile and the proportion of the port in the strategic works, it's to you. When I say study your own grassroots working base, it's because I don't know this is because of my experience, global experience, and especially Latin American experience, shows that it's usually 10, 8, 10, or 10, 85, 5 when it's hard. Sometimes it's 89 and 1. It doesn't matter, but you always find a way to study this perspective. So I give it back to you because it's on you to study. We need to personalize the basis, conducting a study on individualized port in the strategic communication from our own study, free information on social media, and above all, in-person, eye-to-eye work at the base. We need to know the name. When I say Surya, I say Furman, I say Anga, I say the name of the person. I know him. So I need to know by name. Of course, the Furman will not know everybody's name, but the one that is in the ground, grassroots, need to know that. That's why we need an intermediate corp between the board of direction and the member. And that's why it works better when we call by name, when we go beyond the meeting every worker, in every house, in every port city, in every strategic city. When it's hard to meet in the docks, let's meet in the house. I know that it's a cultural thing. It depends on cultural when you are received in your house, but let's invite for coffee. As a trade union leader, I always have a bottle of coffee or tea to drink with someone. So it was in the front of the docker or in the front of the bus station, in the front of the rail station, with a bottle of coffee, a bottle of tea, in order to discuss, to invite someone to have a chat. This is very important. An attractive, dynamic, and proactive periodical website with intermediate and historical content, known by its image and language as our periodical, our newspaper, our trade union. When you look at the symbol, you see, this is our trade union. It's speaking. And this will be for the ones who are with us, for the ones who are against us, and those who are indifferent. They will know just by the symbol. It doesn't even need the language, just for the symbol. It's there. People know it. So we need that. They will call it our periodical, our tract, our newspaper, which will be patiently developed from the ground up, because we need to listen to the people. People will tell, make a big let's make a big meeting and choose a symbol for this newspaper, and then people will choose, the members will choose, and then we will recognize that as their own. Daily communication in the form of a 10-line bulletin, 10-line bullet point, like this is what, that's why I said clear, illustrated sentences and idea. 10-line bulletin at regular intervals. So not making in October and then in Christmas. My God, let's not do that. It has to have regular approach to produce important content on the labor strategic agenda, on the community. We need to talk with the community and in the port and the strategic cities to produce important labor strategic agenda. It doesn't matter where we are. Usually in Indonesia, we are in an island. Then it has Indonesia. Then it has our community, our city. Then it has our working place. We need to dialogue with these things when we go deep and when we go not deep. So that's why it's micro, macro, macro, micro. We are always making a dialogue between them to produce magazines, to go deep, materials on Indonesian culture, music, documents. We need that. We need to approach ourselves to our country. Port and strategic policy, communication to address the port, communities, and the port city. So this is communication and information for political education in a broader sense. As we become rich, our base become rich and understand what we are saying and teach us, because our grassroots leaders can teach us a lot. Give it back to you, Suri.
Okay. It's interesting when you say Pancasila. So before I translate, uh, this Pancasila is our value that hold by even from president all the way to the people. That consists of five aspects. First is religion, second humanity, third unity, fourth democracy, and fifth social justice. So that's
That's
um
Pancasila.
yeah. Oke, dalam hal ini Prof. Marcelo menjelaskan tentang pentingnya komunikasi dan informasi untuk pendidikan politik bagi anggota serikat. Jadi pertama kali adalah kita harus melihat diri kita sebagai organizer dan guru sekaligus pembelajar ataupun pejuang. Jadi saat ini ketika Anda melihat Marcelo sebagai guru, tapi juga ataupun profesor, tapi juga beliau
I cannot hear you, Surya.
halo.
Surya, yes, now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now I do. Now I do.
Oke. Jadi intinya bagaimana komunikasi ini harus dikemas untuk pendidikan politik secara sederhana, secara langsung, secara jernih dan menyeluruh sehingga eh, tersampaikan secara efektif baik itu tentang isu politik, ekonomi, lokal maupun nasional. Dan juga eh, sebelumnya kita sudah membahas bagaimana mengorganisir melalui sejarah, bagaimana kita juga membahas dalam kelas ketiga soal metode dalam melihat diri kita, anggota ataupun uh, kelompok masyarakat lainnya. Sehingga salah satunya adalah bagaimana kita memahami profil anggota kita. Apakah itu biasanya komposisinya adalah yang tadi sudah disampaikan sebelumnya, yang pro terhadap serikat 10%, yang um, masa mengambang 85%, dan 5% ini akan terlibat secara alami. Jadi yang harus diorganisir adalah 85% dan 5% ini. Dan mempelajari profil ini adalah hal yang penting. Sehingga bagaimana membangun atau memproduksi informasi ataupun ilustrasi yang sederhana namun jernih, baik itu di media sosial ataupun pada saat rapat langsung tatap muka. Tadi Marcelo bagaimana dia bisa menyebutkan nama-nama firman, nama-nama Angga dan lain sebagainya. Tetapi juga penting ini sampai kepada grassroots sehingga secara periodik ataupun hal-hal yang diproduksi secara tertulis ini penting untuk dikenal. Kalau bahasa Marcelo tadi periodikal, secara periodikal, sehingga ini yang informasi yang ditunggu-tunggu oleh anggota. Tentu dengan identitas yang sangat menempel dengan serikat kita. Tadi juga Prof. Marcelo menyampaikan apakah produksi konten ini berupa buletin singkat 10 baris yang terbit rutin dengan ilustrasi yang singkat dan jernih, sehingga konten ini menggambarkan agenda strategis baik terhadap anggota serikat kita, baik terhadap kepentingan masyarakat luas, pembangunan kota ataupun negara. Tadi Prof. Marcelo menggambarkan bahwa Pancasila adalah nilai daripada Indonesia dan ini contoh penting bagi dunia. Ini adalah bahasa universal yang sangat bagus sekali dan ini mengilustrasikan secara sederhana dan jernih serta penting posisi atau nilai-nilai Indonesia di mata dunia. Intinya bagaimana kita membangun komunikasi, bagaimana kita membangun informasi, dan bagaimana kita memproduksi konten-konten ataupun ya bahan tulisan tadi ya secara sederhana langsung dan juga menyeluruh sehingga anggota dapat memahami lalu juga kita bisa mengorganisir profil yang tadi digambarkan terhadap demografi atau pekerja ataupun anggota yang ada di serikat kita.
Próximo, Patrício. Por favor. So, communication, agitation, and labor propaganda. Because propaganda can also mean something very It can be used by the fascists, but also by the left. So propaganda is a tool, is an education tool. Communication for unity must be at the heart of our actions. This is very important to translate, Surya. Communication for unity. You know, it is as you said, it's a capital concept, a concept for the Panchasila, uh, but we need to make this Panchasila concrete in our labor actions. So it's heart of our actions. Propaganda must be an educational effort for the most urgent objectives. It's for the assembly, not for the board of directions, to elect the more urgent objectives. But on the other hand, only educated workers through the councils and to the board of directions, to the cadres, can elect the historical perspective. The urgent is for the assembly, but the historical has to be for the body, for the educated body, for the political cadres. So that's why we need to study Indonesia so deep. We need a unified legislation, union protection, the organization of exclusive labor in the case of dockers, and wage increases. And strategic workers also need exclusive labor. Exclusive labor means when you have a say on those who get into work, those who are fired, day by day organization in the working place, and how you form these workers, how you educate this work. That's that's exclusive labor. They cannot hire without asking the trade union. That's exclusive labor. It's the most strong Dockers strength perspective part of their culture when they are strong. Patiently plan and organize a defense in death. These defense that I divided in three classes. Today is the core, the starting core, because the core is the culture, but the starting core is organizing. So organizing is part of a defense in death. It's not a simple defense. It's not a resistance. It's a defense in death. A critical and unified newspaper is the fundamental factor of this action. So we need paper, we need social media, we need our cadres prepared, we need councils, we need discussion, we need debate, we need democracy. We need democracy, and we need a historical perspective. And maybe people call it socialism. I call it too, but I want to see a, Indonesian uh, version of it, an Indonesian way of doing things, an Indonesian way to develop it. That's very important, and only Indonesian people can do that. So it's a critical and unified newspaper to think about everything in Indonesia. Therefore, we define three priorities in the struggle: unity, always unity. We can, as I said, and I please translate that later, Surya. We cannot
Yeah.
have 5, 10 unions speaking different things at the base. This makes a huge confusion in the heads of the workers. We need one speech. If we have to fight among ourselves to have just one vision, we can have 10 leaders, but we just need one voice for these 10 leaders. We need unity. Unity in the struggle of the port unions, the study of the successes and achievements of the last 100 years, and what dockers and the strategic workers must build. And finally, the production of a critical and unified newspaper. So, this is something that you have to study because I'm not in Indonesia. The working group has to organize this. How can we have this study? How can we have the achievements? How can we have the defeats? How it worked in these three phases that we spoke until 1945, until our independence, until 1967, 68. Then after, you have like a president that I studied a little bit, it's Hamibi, I believe. So it's how it was in his government, how it is today. So the change that you just had. So these things you must study. What are our defeats, our progress? This is very important. And for the future. As they say, the future of Indonesia will be very prosper. How can it be prosper for the workers too? So that's why we need a unified critical newspaper. Neoliberal modernization that was imposed by foreign interests to Indonesia means unemployment, the loss of labor legislation, low wages, and the end of trade unions' power. We need that. That's why we need to work with the government. Oh, but the government is corrupt. Oh, but the government is this. Look at how can you make things better, because the only government we have. We don't have another government. But at the same time, we can strengthen our people's power from the bottom, so we can better pressure the government. The government has to be in the interest of Indonesian society and interest of the majority of the people, and the workers are the majority. And that's why we cannot separate our interest from the majority of the workers in Indonesia, because we have to say that new liberal modernization is not in the interests of our people's power modernization for Indonesia. Modernization that brings unemployment is not in the interest of Indonesian people in any place. We need communication for educational purpose. And the way to achieve this is to build port and strategic councils based on the natural cooperative work of the port and other collective experience. Every strategic worker has its own collective experience on cooperative, natural cooperative work. To steer communities and cities, we are not separated from them. And in Indonesia has this particularly of the islands. So every island has its own, and you have different cultures. But we need one voice, one Indonesia. Unity in culture and collective port act and strategic action are the best responses to neoliberal ideology and practice. We do not need neoliberal ideas in Indonesia. That's very important, because Indonesia will find its own way to prosperity, and we need to share this prosperity. And neoliberal vision does not share neither power, neither economy, neither prosperity. I give back to you, Surya. Próximo, Patrícia.
Ya, dalam hal ini Prof. Marcelo menekankan soal komunikasi, bagaimana komunikasi ini untuk persatuan harus menjadi inti daripada kerja-kerja kita. Propaganda juga harus menjadi upaya untuk pendidikan dan untuk tujuan yang paling urgent atau mendesak. Apakah itu soal aturan atau undang-undang, perlindungan terhadap pekerja ataupun serikat, Prof. Marcelo membahasakan organisasi kerja eksklusif. Maksudnya semua keputusan di tempat kerja harus melalui serikat, apakah itu peningkatan gaji, peningkatan upah, sampai dengan PHK. Itu harus melewati serikat. Sehingga bagaimana kita merencanakan dan mengatur sebuah sistem pertahanan yang mendalam, dan ini bisa dilakukan lewat bahan tulisan dalam bentuk koran, dalam bentuk sosial media yang kritis dan juga terpadu. Dan ini adalah faktor yang paling mendasar daripada membangun komunikasi, agitasi, ataupun propaganda. Karena agitasi ini bisa digunakan dari perspektif paling kiri ataupun paling kanan. Salah satunya adalah bagaimana tadi Prof. Marcelo menggambarkan membuat Pancasila konkret dalam kehidupan sehari-hari. Ini adalah salah satu contoh tujuan untuk mengkomunikasikan sebuah nilai. Intinya selain budaya, aspek budaya yang kita sudah pelajari sebelumnya, budaya pekerja, budaya buruh, sejarah, dan hal penting lainnya adalah bagaimana kita mengorganisir. inilah sistem pertahanan kita. Kita butuh bahan tulisan, kita butuh sosial media, ataupun bentuk komunikasi lainnya. Penting untuk aspek lain yang dibahas oleh Prof. Marcelo tadi adalah penting untuk bekerja dengan pemerintah, walaupun korup, walaupun dianggap tidak pro rakyat, tetapi intinya adalah bagaimana sebuah gerakan pekerja, gerakan rakyat semakin kuat, semakin dikenal, semakin diakui dalam memberikan tekanan sehingga melahirkan sebuah undang-undang, sebuah aturan yang menguntungkan bagi pekerja ataupun rakyat. Poinnya dari hal yang Prof. Marcelo sampaikan dalam hal ini adalah bagaimana kita membangun komunikasi untuk persatuan. Inilah yang menjadi inti kerja-kerja kita. Mediumnya adalah salah satunya tadi dicontohkan oleh Prof. Marcelo adalah lewat dewan buruh atau dewan pekerja.
Well, building important strategic organization in the 21st century, especially in the second quarter of it, it's a challenge for Indonesian workers, strategic workers, because we have to share this huge wealth that is created, that was created, and that will be created. So organizing must respond concretely to workers' demands. That's why you separated urgent, historical, and important demands. Port councils are the natural evolution of our grassrooted work. So of the political work of port and the strategic culture to address immediate and historical and in between important. So we have immediate, urgent, important in the middle, and historical. What? Because we need to explain the workers. We need to educate the workers as we educate ourselves in the way that what is urgent, what is historical, because the workers will say, this is urgent. And then we say, this is historical. This is important. We say, oh, but this is important. We say, this is historical. This is urgent. So where is the priority? It's a collective answer. They also aim to obtain legislation allowing us to unionize. Legislation that prevents us to unionize is legislation against Indonesia. Because we do a citizenship work. We educate our people. So the government understands that. We are part of Indonesian society. We educate Indonesian workers. We educate for its prosperity. So we have part in it. To obtain unified labor legislation, to establish organized and inclusive work, to increase wages. The more wages the workers have, the more they consume Indonesian goods, the more prospers the country, our communities, our cities. The organizational heart of the port lies in the port councils as its strategic place lies in the strategic councils, port culture, strategic culture, and the society's port front. Because we need a society ports front in the port. When it's an airport, a society airport front, which organize themselves patiently and take the necessary time to act together. The councils are the building block of the debate inside our working place, but can also work at the community, can also work at the city. So many possibilities. So the councils are the building block of the debate, the basis of organizational structure, the flexibility factor within the state, the seed of multiple possibilities. Please emphasize this, Surya. The councils are the seed of multiple possibilities. A meeting place for 4 to 20 workers, usually this is the size of the working group. 3, 4 to 18, 20 can be 30, but this is the usual It's when people really know, really work together. These are the councils. So that's why I put this way. And these usually are the groups of the dockers. They are from 4 to 20, depending on the grade of the technology. Workers to discuss the last union meeting. It's a place to discuss last union meeting. And in the last union meeting, you discuss the last council's meeting. Daily work, the immediate and the strategic demands, and the important ones. The councils are the ultimate expression of grassroots people's power, complementing what already exists to defend and conquer what is necessary within the trade union. The councils do not compete with the trade union, they make it stronger. The confrontation must be defensive and debated. Every confrontation must be exhaustively defensive and debated, plan over and over again. If you go to a strike, cannot be, oh, we want, because people usually they get things silent and they explode. We cannot be like that. We must study. We must think about. We must study over and over. We must plan. We must project. And so our government should be the same, should do the same. The companies should do the same. Plan, project, prosperity. That's the way doing. Carried out with patience, resistance, perseverance, and daily work. Within the council, we work with pencil, as I said, paper, the union membership, always to have a union membership with you, to unionize, because people come and say, "Oh, I want to unionize," and then you get into our website. No, I have it here. Fill it up, and with a big smile and actual law to discuss the law that we want. Councils are the natural expression of port and strategic culture and the ultimate expression of labor practice. These are corps of action, corps of study, bodies of action, bodies of study. And they are very, very strong when the trade union is strong, when the base is strong. I give it back to you. Próximo, Patrícia.
Oke. Dalam slide ini, Prof. Marcelo membahas bagaimana sebuah council atau kita bahasakan sebagai dewan ini adalah jantung organisasi. Jadi bagaimana organisasi harus menjawab tuntutan atau demand daripada pekerja. Dewan ini adalah evolusi alami dari kerja politik, sebuah budaya dewan untuk menjawab tuntutan, untuk menjawab keinginan daripada para pekerja. Jadi Prof. Marcelo menekankan dewan ini adalah bibit daripada berbagai kemungkinan yang bisa menjadi suatu poin penting dalam gerakan kita. Misalnya kalau di Indonesia mungkin untuk konsep teman-teman ada kita komite bipartit, tripartit. Ini adalah LKS bipartit. Ini adalah versi awal untuk Dewan Buruh yang jika bisa dijalankan secara demokratis. Namun lembaga-lembaga ini masih sifatnya konsultatif dan belum memiliki kekuasaan nyata seperti halnya atau hakikatnya Dewan Buruh yang disampaikan oleh Prof. Marcelo. Jadi proses evolutif ini digambarkan tadi bisa dimulai dari kelompok kecil menuju dewan sejati. Misalnya diawali dari kelompok kerja 4-10 orang, mendiskusikan harian soal isu-isu di lingkungan kerja, apakah itu soal hak dan lain sebagainya. Lalu ada kelompok aksi dan pelatihan, bagaimana menghubungkan dengan serikat atas isu-isu tersebut dan menyusun agenda perjuangan, lalu meningkat lagi menjadi Dewan Buruh dari kelompok aksi tadi untuk mendiskusikan atau menjadikan forum tetap untuk berkoordinasi, menganalisa, riset, dan menghasilkan keputusan strategis. Dan di ujung adalah majelis, seperti majelis umum atau serikat. Sehingga bagaimana ini sebuah badan untuk menerima laporan, mengesahkan keputusan, dan memperluas gerakan. Intinya adalah Dewan Pekerja atau Dewan Buruh ini adalah sebuah laboratorium demokrasi kelas pekerja. Bagaimana Dewan ini mengubah tempat kerja menjadi ruang politik, pekerja menjadi warga aktif, ataupun mendiskusikan alat-alat perjuangan efektif lainnya. Intinya dalam konteks di Indonesia adalah Dewan Buruh tidak hanya berhenti di sisi teori atau diskursus atau wacana, tetapi ini harus menjadi jalan untuk mengembalikan martabat serikat sebagai wakil sejati daripada pekerja, bukan hanya sekedar pelengkap aturan ataupun pelengkap PKB.
Well, the response of port and strategic workers must include all members of society. When we aim beyond our members, we will better organize our members. Organizing is, I will speak about port because it's where I come from, but we can use for all strategic workers, okay? Organizing sport thinking put into practice through a method. Councils represent the action of port workers' thinking, which, through its own method, defends culture and organizes strategic labor under public control. Public democracy. We are in favor of democracy, of the majorities. We exercise public control. Port councils or workers' councils in the port are a natural evolution of work groups and action training committees. This is also another name of calling it. Studying groups, action training, natural work, many ways of calling the councils. Port struggle is port education and culture applied through port thinking, method and organization. It's organizing in its core. Therefore, it is inseparable from port work. When I say rail work, its councils will be, you cannot separate it from rail work. The same with port work. There is no port work without organization, and every labor dies without its culture. That's why the machine will never ever substitute us. If we have political control, if we can bring society our own side, if we can bring the government to our side. Because if we are unemployed, if we are out of a port, who will defend the city, the Dockers city, the Dockers community? Who will do that? The machines? The bosses? No, they will not, because they are not on the side of democracy. Democracy can only be exercised by human beings, by the majority of the workers. So we cannot let our labor culture die. Port education, it is its political training work applied according to the intensity of its culture and its power. So the more power, the more culture that we exercise in our working place, the more political training can be applied, the more education can be applied. And councils must function to carry the port's message beyond the port, to the community, to bring society, the world closer to the port through the main, the global supply chain, the local supply, the regional, as we studied before. Port culture permeates all support, unionization, and mobilization. If you have a port culture, it will permeate all support, unionization, mobilization. We will study this in this next class. Port culture is essentially collective. And all the other strategic workers, they must find its own way to find its own culture. Individualism, selfishness, isolation are contrary to port work, to port culture, to port thought. The union must explain its own culture and establish a register of all port workers that determines their level of support for the defense of rights and demands, the level of membership, as they usually do, and the level of those who participate actively in the trade union, and these are the councils. The port must be organized in partnership with society. That's the aim. I give it back to you, Surya. Próximo.
Oke, jadi dalam slide ini ide utamanya adalah bagaimana sebuah organisasi menjadi sebuah pemikiran kolektif. Dalam hal ini konteksnya adalah pekerja pelabuhan yang dipraktikkan lewat metode. Jadi dewan ini mewakili tindakan ataupun pemikiran anggota serikat untuk membela apakah itu dalam bentuk culture atau budaya dan juga kerja strategis yang lebih terorganisir. Sehingga tidak ada lagi kerja tanpa organisasi di lingkungan kerja. Dan setiap organisasi menurut Marcelo ini akan mati tanpa adanya budaya yang hidup di dalam serikat. Pendidikan pelabuhan adalah sebuah pendidikan politik yang diterapkan sesuai intensitas budaya dan juga aspek kekuatannya. Jadi organisasi pelabuhan atau dalam bentuk dewan tadi adalah bentuk baru daripada kekuatan kolektif pekerja pelabuhan ataupun serikat pekerja strategis lainnya. Bagaimana menyatukan fungsi ekonomi, fungsi sosial, dan juga fungsi politik. Dan ini juga berakar di basis kerja, apakah itu pelabuhan, bandara, dan lain sebagainya. Tujuannya adalah untuk mempertahankan kendali atas anggota, atas pekerja, dan juga dalam konteks rantai pasok nasional. Salah satu poin penting lainnya adalah bagaimana organisasi pelabuhan ataupun organisasi pekerja yang modern bukan hanya menjadi serikat formal, tetapi sistem pemikiran, sistem budaya, dan tindakan kolektif inilah yang mencerminkan bagaimana kita mempertahankan kontrol sosial atas tempat kerja, atas pelabuhan, atas bandara, dari dominasi kepentingan manajemen ataupun kepentingan kapital global. Intinya, bagaimana kita berpikir, bagaimana kita membuat sebuah budaya yang hidup, dan bagaimana kita menjadikan solidaritas yang terus bergerak. Sehingga pelabuhan, bandara, ataupun tempat kerja kita bukan hanya sekedar tempat kerja, tapi menjaga kedaulatan anggota, menjaga kedaulatan sebuah negara, dalam hal Indonesia itu sendiri.
So this is very important. These two sentences, Surya and other comrades. Every generation has a struggle and a conquest on the horizon for the category and the working class. So you as a docker, as an airline worker, as a rail worker, every generation has a struggle. The struggle of this generation must be greater than the challenge it faces to leave a legacy for the next generation. To build a daily coffee in the port, you start with the simple things. A coffee at home when you visit some fellow worker, especially if it's a council member. A major political event for unions and the working class, May 1st, for example. A trade union list is not just the unionization list, but the one that will determine the level of support for the demands, whether it's below or above the 70%, the 757, as I spoke before. All non-union workers must pay dues once in a year. We have to put this in the legislation. This is a way to educate, because they are part of our conquests, our general conquest. So if they don't pay monthly, We have to find a way to make them pay annual. Even if we make a party and we invite them all and we make them pay for entrance to have food, to have access to other things, to have a way to be with them as trade union leaders, not just as far away leaders and workers, but part of the same group, of the same body. So workers, all non-union workers must pay, and and their contribution determines their position in favor of the struggle. If they pay once in a year, if they pay every month, and if they go and build with their time, because nothing pays more than their own time. If they work for the union and they are paying, they are giving their dues with their time. So that's why the council members are so important, because they are the richness of the union, because they are more than just to pay. And to pay is important, because we don't finance the struggle, who will finance? The state. But the state usually belongs to the bosses. And even if we struggle not to be, and the bosses will pay for the dues, that's not right. The members should pay for their union to be strong. And the level of participation will show their commitment. Workers in the port, the community, and the city are divided into members, indifferent, opponents, and union officials. Members, indifferent, opponents, and union officials. And I'm giving a fifth element: council membership. It will make a body that will help to get more members out of the indifferent and out of the opponents. The council members are this part that adds up to the body. How can we greet each other, call each worker by name, and listen to the human tragedy from their lips? Because there are many things to tell. Keep a list of union members and determine their level of commitment. If they are unionized, in support and in communication at councils, assemblies, neighborhood associations where they live, and the city where they live, because they are part of it. Then visit the homes of the most close workers to the most far. We start with those that, if I speak with you today and say, who can you count in your union? How many? 30, 40, 50, 100, 300? These are the ones that you need to have a special link with them. So this is the main visit. Then to the most far. Promote cultural events for dock workers, strategic workers, and their families. Finally, invite the community and key allies of the struggle in the city to pay tribute inside your own union. So if you had a great strike, a great struggle, and you got victorious, if you conquer what you wanted, when you make an anniversary of it, when you commemorate, you make a big party of it, invite those who participate in this struggle in the community. Plan every strike well in advance, as we spoke before, as it must be debated in the councils, decided in the representative assembly, based on quantity, quality, need, exercise, and readiness of strategic power, port's power, of the assembly's power. The council's power will be exercised in the assembly's power with everybody. And it will give value to the leadership. Give it back to you.
Prof. Marcelo menekankan satu kalimat bahwa perjuangan kita ini harus lebih besar daripada tantangannya untuk meninggalkan sebuah warisan. Artinya tugas kita bukan hanya untuk menuntut hari ini, tetapi membangun sebuah fundamental atau dasar yang lebih kuat untuk generasi berikutnya. Jadi bagaimana kita membangun organisasi yang tahan lama, bukan hanya reaktif. Bagaimana kita menghidupkan solidaritas dan tradisi uh, serikat pekerja. Bagaimana kita membentuk sebuah dewan pelabuhan, dewan pekerja sebagai pusat kesadaran kolektif, dan bagaimana kita menghubungkan gerakan serikat dengan masyarakat sekitar agar perjuangan serikat pekerja juga menjadi perjuangan seluruh rakyat. Jadi bagaimana juga kita, tadi Marcelo menyampaikan bagaimana kita mengenali setiap pekerja anggota kita secara pribadi, kita sapa mereka dengan namanya, kita pahami ceritanya, kita dengarkan kesulitannya, lalu juga kita catat siapa anggota yang aktif, diem ataupun menolak, dan kita dekati mereka satu persatu. Dan juga setiap aksi termasuk mogok ini juga harus diputuskan secara bersama lewat apakah itu dewan, majelis. Jadi bukan sebuah keputusan spontanitas. Ini nilai-nilai yang harus ditinggalkan sebagai warisan adalah bagaimana kita membentuk atau meninggalkan warisan berupa kemandirian organisasi, tidak hanya tergantung kepada satu poros kekuatan, bagaimana juga kita mendidik kader-kader atau anggota-anggota kita, dan bagaimana kita menjadikan sebuah gerakan kita adalah sebuah gerakan yang membanggakan kelas pekerja. Intinya setiap generasi itu akan mewarisi tantangan. Namun juga di sisi lain mereka juga mewarisi kesempatan. Kita mungkin tidak akan melihat hasil akhir perjuangan kita, tapi kita bisa memastikan bagaimana generasi setelah kita mewarisi kekuatan, bukan kelemahan. Inilah arti sejati daripada meninggalkan sebuah warisan perjuangan.
So class politics, so mass politics, and cadre politics, so those who we can count on, the political cadres that we form in the construction of port or strategic concepts. Those are the elements. So the ones that are the leaders are those who will choose on the ground the formation of these intermediate body that we call councils, you can call another name, to establish a list of partners, of workers, of comrades, based on their participation in the workers' assemblies. You cannot be a council member if you do not participate in the trade unions assembly. How can you mean if you are an outsider, you cannot organize inside the trade union, inside the workers' base. Discuss the current situation, the most important and urgent and historical aspects, linking them, and finally, what it must be built. There can be no third or second class dockers in the port. There cannot be third or second class workers in a strategic work. The goal is to have a good salary for 6 hours worked per day or even less, and 5 days per week or even less. With technology, we have to speak about technology in order to work less in the day, in the month, and in life, to spend more time with our families, with education, with our things. And technology can help us. This is the good way to put technology. We will have a class about it. There must be no disorganized and precarious work in the port or in the strategic work. Wages must be at least 3 times higher than the national wage. This is very important for dockers and for strategic workers. I see that in Indonesia you have a $12,000 per capita. This is not a match for the Indonesian prosperity, and we need to equalize, we need to make it better. There must be no disorganized and precarious work in the port and in a strategic place. Wages must be at least 3 times higher than the national wage. This is a very important thing. To create a mutual aid fund, to increase union participation in the labor management. Port modernization must be negotiated in three tripartitely: state, labor, and capital, to work and to strike with excellence. If we work with excellence, we strike also with excellence. Think about it. To create a prosperous sport environment for workers. This is our goal for our community, for our city, in every strategic place. The councils function as breeding grounds for political cadres and class-based union members. The councils function as breeding grounds for political cadres and class-based union members. In this dynamic, we propose building a major political mobilizations. I would propose four, but you can propose the way you believe, because it has to be adapted to Indonesia. First, to the priority, the May 1st, because it's historic. It usually is done for the trade unions. In the most important square of the port city, of its strategic city. Second, a port family and community event, whether Christmas or Ramadan, you choose according to the economic way that you look, and it's very important that you see that is already in your culture. This is very important. So the Panchasila, it's an important thing. So you will do it in a way that you have them all together. So also, who needs to help in the port and the community? What is the community that the dockers or the strategic workers need to help? Third, on the occasion of the union's anniversary, the port family, the strategic family, organize a dinner or a lunch. And fourth, on the anniversary of the port workers' struggle, on the anniversary of a historic strike or a date that you want to honor, a demonstrations held at the entrance or inside the port or strategic port, the airport, the rail station, lasting an hour or more, depending on the conditions, to pay tribute to the past and to support current and future struggles. So I give it to you, Surya. These are some ideas, that we can build and exercise with the class politics, the mass, and the cadres, them all. I give it back to you.
Oke, jadi dalam slide ini Prof. Marcelo menyampaikan bahwa Dewan Pelabuhan ini adalah ruang pembentukan kekuatan politik pekerja. Disinilah pekerja belajar memahami siapa kawan, siapa lawan, dan bagaimana membangun kekuatan dari bawah. Dewan ini bukan hanya tempat rapat, tetapi adalah merupakan sekolah kader, tempat melatih pemimpin yang berpikir dan bertindak secara kolektif. Prinsip dasarnya adalah tidak boleh ada buruh kelas 2 atau kelas 3. Semua pekerja itu harus memiliki hak dan martabat yang sama. Misalnya kerja secara manusiawi 6 jam kerja per hari, 5 hari per minggu, dan upah minimal itu 3 kali daripada upah nasional. Lingkungan pelabuhan juga harus lingkungan pelabuhan atau lingkungan kerja lainnya itu harus tertata dan juga membawa kesejahteraan. Tidak boleh ada kerja yang tidak terorganisir, kontrak yang tidak melalui serikat, kontrak kerja yang tidak melalui serikat, ataupun ada kondisi-kondisi kerja yang berbahaya. Begitupun terhadap modernisasi ini juga harus adil. Harus dinegosiasikan secara bipartit, secara tripartit, bukan dilakukan secara sepihak. Dewan juga menjadi tempat untuk menyatukan pekerja dalam kesadaran kelas, menumbuhkan kader ideologis dan organisatoris, menghubungkan perjuangan kerja sehari-hari dengan arah politik jangka panjang, dan membentuk solidaritas antar generasi. Salah satu contoh bentuk mobilisasi, ada 4 yang dicontohkan oleh Marcelo, tapi ini hanya sebagai konteks contoh yang disampaikan oleh Prof. Marcelo. Pertama adalah mobilisasi misalnya Hari Buruh Internasional 1 Mei atau May Day, di mana ada aksi besar tahunan untuk merayakan May Day, memperingati sejarah perjuangan buruh. Lalu juga kedua ada mobilisasi dalam bentuk acara misalnya keluarga dalam konteks Natalan atau Ramadan, sehingga ini membentuk momentum solidaritas sosial, bagaimana kita saling membantu, keluarga, pekerja, ataupun masyarakat di sekitar lingkungan kerja kita. Lalu juga ada ketika anniversary atau ulang tahun serikat, di mana kita membangun momentum kebersamaan, apakah itu makan siang bersama sebagai simbol persatuan dan juga penghargaan terhadap perjuangan. Lalu misalnya kita juga contoh keempat, bagaimana kita memperingati pemogokan bersejarah, di mana misalnya di SPJ City pernah melakukan mogok menutup gerbang ekonomi nasional selama 4 hari, sehingga aksi simbolik tersebut ketika kita rayakan adalah sebagai bentuk penghormatan terhadap perjuangan masa lalu dan juga menjadi bensin atau semangat bagi generasi yang akan datang. Terakhir, Dewan ini adalah tempat buruh belajar untuk berdaulat melalui politik kelas, politik kaderisasi, bagaimana pekerja membangun sebuah organisasi yang mandiri, yang solid, dan sadar akan kekuatan kolektifnya.
Yeah, we are coming to próximo, Patrícia, por favor. We are coming to the end, but it's very important that we start believing how can we do working groups in order to achieve these ideas, if they can be reasonably done in Indonesia or not. This is how we need to prepare, studying the history, studying the organizing tools, and studying these actions. And then it comes to building important strategic councils from the ground. You can call it in a different way, but these working groups to help the trade union, to help to evolve in the organizing way, it needs to call us to a question: what is to be done? When the working group on the ground has more than 4 workers, it can form a port or strategic working group. It's part of the natural work. It's a natural work, or you work together, you study together the situation, you inquire, you participate together, you are there in order to produce a collective way of doing things. Drawing on its experience, this group can, based on a specific frame or reference or policy, form an action training group, and depending on its maturity, a port or strategic council. But you can call it another way. The council, the important is the tool. The council member acts as a liaison between trade union and the working group and the base. Once a month at the General Assembly, the council members must present a summary of the council's discussion and debate and submit it to the Assembly's decision based on their own daily and strategic demands. You see, there will be always little groups that are more organized to debate, and they will bring their demands. Instead of having just individual demands, you start having demands from working places, from working communities, from working groups in different hours that you need to organize. This is a tool for the trade union. Councils strengthen the union, and the union must strengthen their sprouts. They are sprouts, they are seeds that are blooming like flowers. Within the initial working group, future council, the assembly agenda is discussed. So the trade union's agenda is discussed. Membership and unionization are obtained. Concretely, reality is studied, including national. That's why I said macro and micro. Studied, and discussions take place on the port, communities, cities, and the supply chain and the strategic part of it. At the union's General Assembly, the institutional agenda is debated and demands are structured. Within the council, the debate is radicalized to advance to the immediate and the class struggle. The Assembly meets with intermediate caution and the Council with historical purpose. That's why you need the political cadres, because it needs historical purpose, because it's deeper than just an assembly that you study 2 hours, that you meet 2 hours per month. The councils you meet almost every day. It's a day by day thing. So I give it back to you, Surya.
Ya, dalam slide terakhir ini,
Próximo, Patrícia.
Prof. Marcelo menjelaskan bagaimana sebuah dewan pekerja atau dewan buruh dibangun dari bawah, bukan ditunjuk dari atas. Intinya semua dimulai dari kelompok kecil pekerja yang sadar, berdiskusi, dan belajar bersama hingga menjadi dewan yang kuat dan berpengaruh. Artinya anggota dewan ini menjadi jembatan antara basis pekerja dan kepemimpinan serikat. Adapun tahapan pembentukan dewan, ya, seperti yang digambarkan Prof. Marcelo, ini diawali kelompok kerja atau grup diskusi awal, mungkin 4 orang atau lebih, dimulai dengan diskusi tentang masalah di tempat kerja, di pelabuhan, apakah itu jam kerja, terkait aspek safety, hak, dan juga bagaimana kita bersolidaritas. Lalu dari sana terbentuk kelompok pelatihan dan kelompok aksi, sehingga dari diskusi kelompok ini belajar untuk mengorganisir, menyusun agenda, mendata anggota, dan juga memahami kondisi sosial ekonomi sekitar. Dan pada akhirnya terbentuklah Dewan Pelabuhan, di mana setelah matang kelompok ini menjadi sebuah dewan resmi yang menghubungkan antara pekerja, serikat, komunitas, dan juga rantai pasok. Ini yang disebut Marcelo tadi mikro makro, makro mikro. Dan adapun fungsi dan tanggung jawab dewan ini adalah menjadi penghubung antara keputusan serikat dan aspirasi pekerja di lapangan, lalu juga melaporkan hasil diskusi tadi ke rapat umum, mengkaji realitanya, apakah itu kondisi kerja, dan juga isu-isu ataupun dinamika di tempat kerja, dan mengubah diskusi menjadi tuntutan atau demand politik ataupun menjadi sebuah perjuangan strategis. Serikat, dewan ini memperkuat serikat, dan serikat harus memberi ruang tumbuh juga bagi dewan. Artinya serikat bukan hanya pemimpin, tetapi fasilitator dalam bentuk demokrasi dari level bawah. Dewan adalah akar, serikat adalah batang, dan daun yang tumbuh darinya. Intinya, dewan ini lahir dari sebuah obrolan kecil di antara pekerja, tumbuh lewat kepercayaan, dan berbuah menjadi kekuatan pekerja di pelabuhan atau lingkungan kerja lainnya.
So the outcome, this is the last part, councils are the maximum expression of popular power in a way that we can have it in the port, in the strategic, because they are the body. If they're strong, the trade union is strong, the base is strong, the society is strong, because you are organized, you are debating, you are discussing. This is democracy. This is participative democracy. It is about building popular power in regional politics, in a union renewal rooted in the masses gathered in councils. A revolution, it's, and I would substitute the word revolution here for punch shasila, in the way that is it's beautiful in a way that is put, but you can use both. It's about profoundly transforming the economy, politics, social aspects, and culture of workers. And port and strategic workers can contribute to this by transforming their own culture, their economics, political, and social environment. The council and the working group, the working study group, debates will be immediate, important, and historic, urgent things. All things will be debated. The councils are the space where affiliates, where members can adapt to the union framework, the country's policy, and strengthening the union. The necessary debate is what submits the will of the businessmen, the bosses, the rich people in Indonesia, to the state and to the workers, because because we are the majority. State and the workers, when it's representative, are the majority, and this is democracy. For a just, fair, revolutionary Panchasala, I hope I'm Panchas uh,
Pancasila.
Panchasila,
Ya,
Panchasila, Panchasila revolutionary society committed to a fair and sustainable port and strategic place. We must work politically in working groups, in working councils, linking the rank and file to the union in the councils, the union leader to the councils, and the organized worker groups, all debating what is important for the defense of the rights of workers, communities, communes, cities, supply chains, Indonesia, to debate immediate, important, concrete, historical, revolutionary thinking within the councils, considering the urgent, important circumstantial, cultural, and historical role of port and strategic workers. And that's how Panchasila's values they become concrete. It's within the workers, it's within the concrete things that Indonesian society produces and proposes as a gift to the world and to humanity. Thank you, Surya.
ya. Dalam slide terakhir ini, Prof. Marcelo menggambarkan Dewan ini sebagai ekspresi tertinggi daripada kekuasaan pekerja atau kekuatan pekerja. Jadi Dewan adalah sebuah bentuk konkret dari kekuatan pekerja di tempat kerja mereka masing-masing. Jadi ini bukan hanya sekedar struktur organisasi, tetapi menjadi ruang di mana pekerja belajar memimpin dirinya sendiri dan mengubah lingkungannya. Sehingga demokrasi sejati itu terjadi ketika suara pekerja ini menjadi mayoritas untuk menentukan arah kebijakan. Makna revolusioner daripada Dewan ini, atau Prof. Marcelo menyebutnya dalam konteks Indonesia adalah Pancasila. Jadi Dewan ini bukan sekedar forum diskusi, tetapi alat untuk membangun kekuatan pekerja dalam hal politik, dan juga bagaimana mengubah kesadaran menjadi tindakan, membahas masa depan, isu-isu masa depan, dan di Dewan inilah diharapkan terjadi sebuah perubahan ekonomi, sosial, dan budaya yang mengakar dari bawah. Fungsi dari Dewan ini adalah tempat beradaptasi dan juga menjadi tempat pendidikan politik, ruang demokrasi langsung, dan juga sebagai penghubung kekuatan pekerja, apakah itu dari buruh, dari pekerja, dari komunitas, ataupun lembaga publik agar bekerja dalam satu visi, membawa kesejahteraan bersama. Prinsipnya adalah kedaulatan pekerja yang ada di tempat kerja, politik kelas, dan juga mentransformasikan tradisi atau budaya untuk membangun solidaritas, kerjasama, dan tanggung jawab sosial sebagai nilai inti daripada serikat pekerja, baik di pelabuhan ataupun tempat kerja strategis lainnya. Jadi intinya Dewan adalah jantung kekuasaan pekerja. Di sanalah pekerja bukan lagi penonton, tetapi pengambil keputusan atas nasib mereka sendiri. Dari pelabuhan ataupun tempat kerja strategis lainnya, pekerja belajar untuk berdaulat, untuk memerintah, dan itulah arti demokrasi yang sejati.
So I give it back to you, Surya, so you can open to the conference. I'm sorry for taking long today, but it gives us the opportunity to open for the working groups. You have at least 3 working groups. Study Indonesian society. It's very important to study Indonesian society. Study these 200 oligarchs that rule the country. Why is the government taking back the nickels production, the petrol production, the coals production, the palm oil production, nationalizing, making industry strong in the country, being the 10th or the 11th GDP economy in the world. And we as dockers, we must study this commerce, these 3 strategic points, the stroking points that Indonesian global supply chain and local supply chain controls. We need to understand it, because as it produces richness and wealth, we can be part of it. we can share this wealth that is produced. And then we need this to study, as the airport workers need to study for tourism, the linking points. And these are the big challenges that we have. So this is one working group. The other group is organize. How can we organize better? What we had, what we have, what we will have. And the late one is how can we make use of the councils better? So emphasizing organizing. So emphasize the organizing we have today. Is it a good tool to have something between membership and the political board, the trade unions board? So it's up to you to study this. So please translate and give the floor to the comrades. And I apologize that we took long today.
Oke, Prof. Marcelo menyampaikan terakhir sebelum kita masuk sesi tanya jawab. Sebelumnya permohonan maaf dari Prof. Marcelo karena waktu kursus atau kelas hari ini begitu panjang. Tapi harapannya dari peserta hari ini bisa membentuk sebuah grup diskusi. Pertama soal bagaimana mempelajari tentang situasi sosial dan ekonomi di Indonesia, terutama terhadap penguasaan beberapa aspek. Misalnya tadi Prof. Marcelo menggambarkan ada nikel, ada BBM, ada batu bara, sawit, dan bagaimana Indonesia menjadi kekuatan GDP dunia. Nah, ini kita harus mempelajari tentang rantai pasok ini dan bagaimana kita menjadi bagian yang memahami itu dan memproduksi atau menciptakan kesejahteraan bagi anggota ataupun masyarakat lainnya. Ini adalah tantangan terbesar. Lalu grup diskusi lainnya bagaimana kita mengorganisir apa yang kita punya dan apa yang akan kita tuju. Nah, ini adalah bagaimana membuat atau mengoptimalkan konsel atau dewan menjadi lebih optimal dan juga lebih baik. Nah, silakan teman-teman jika ada pertanyaan. Prof. Marcelo menyampaikan permohonan maaf karena cukup panjang kelas hari ini. Halo?
Mas Tibo, Beli ada pertanyaan?
Ya. Halo, Prof. Halo.
Ya, lanjut.
Oh, lanjut ya.
Beli.
Udah kedengaran ya? Prof, before I would like to say thanks for valuable knowledge for today. And then I would like to ask something related our company situation. Our company started in 1999 with around 1,200 employees. All of them were permanent workers. But now only about 25 or 30% are permanent, and the rest are 70% are contract workers. Many of these contract workers actually want to join the labor union, but I think they feel worried because of their employment status. They might be more worried if any issue comes up. So my question is, what kind of strategy or approach would you suggest to encourage and protect contract workers who want to take part in union activities? And then I want to ask also, does this kind of situation happen as well in your country? That's all, Prof. Thank you.
Surya, please translate to Barça, por favor. Please. so
Ya,
the others can understand.
ya. Intinya Beli Agung menanyakan tentang ada background penurunan anggota SPJ ICT dari 1.200 sekarang menjadi sekitar 30%, dan juga ada situasi di mana eh, yang sisa atau gap tadi diisi oleh pekerja kontrak ataupun outsourcing. Nah, situasinya pekerja outsourcing ini ingin berserikat, dan Beli Agung menanyakan tadi bagaimana tanggapan Prof. Marcelo terhadap situasi ini. Pertanyaan kedua adalah apakah situasi ini juga terjadi di belahan dunia lain ataupun di Brazil dalam hal ini.
So
I give it back to you.
Thank you, Agung, for your question. It's very important. We will deal better in the class of law. We have one specific class for law. But the idea is to prepare to construct this law, this collective bargain agreement that will say the percentage of the workers that will be permanent and contractual on the contract. And we need to be very specific, whether in the law, so it has to be national for Indonesia, not just for one enterprise, but national for Indonesia, and also for a branch. So for a port, not just company, but for a port. As we do not get, we will unionize all. How? We get, if we will have a meeting, and then we say that it's important to unionize, but we keep them away. We don't show to the bosses. We just get the authorization, the membership, and we put it away. We don't show to the bosses, because if we show, they will get penalties for that. As I'm believing that you are explaining me that they will be worried, as they will not be a permanent worker in the future. So the idea is to getting step by step closer to the worker, whether they are contract worker or permanent workers. We have to be for all people inside, in this case, the port, but any other strategic place. And we cannot separate between first class worker and second class worker. We need to organize them all. In this case, being cautious. So we get the membership, we put it away. When he becomes permanent, we go there and do it, and we show it to the boss when he's permanent, or when we have a collective bargain agreement that guarantees protection for all union members, whether they are contract or permanent. So the more we increase security, the more they will they will join the union. And until there, we get support. If the person doesn't unionize at the beginning, as I said in the 757, we build 7 first, then we build 5. We build the first 7. It means we get support. Out of 10 inside a company, for example, if your company is 1,000 workers, we need 700 support. It doesn't mean 700 members, but it means 700 people that I'm with you. When you go there, they listen to you. They don't turn their backs. They are not afraid to talk with you. And this means support. And that's what you need. Do it step by step. And we will continue working on that. I will keep this question, so we will debate more in the law class. Thank you, Ango, for the opportunity. I give it to you, Surya, to translate.
Yep. Terima kasih pertanyaannya, Beli Agung. Intinya kita akan mendiskusikan soal aturan ini dalam situasi yang tadi ditanyakan Beli Agung dalam kelas selanjutnya. Tapi idenya adalah bagaimana kita menyiapkan sebuah aturan yang konstruktif, baik itu lewat PKB ataupun undang-undang ataupun secara sektoral, misalnya dalam hal ini adalah sektor pelabuhan. Memang keadaannya sangat tidak menggambarkan sebuah masa depan yang baik bagi teman-teman yang bekerja sebagai kontrak ataupun outsourcing. Tetapi kita harus melakukannya selangkah demi selangkah. Dan pesan yang bisa disampaikan SPJCT adalah gerakan SPJCT adalah untuk semua orang. Jadi pesan utamanya adalah pesan persatuan. Bagaimana kita mengorganisir seluruh aspek pekerja yang ada di GICT. Dan salah satu poin penting lainnya adalah kita tetap harus sadar, kita harus selalu berhati-hati sehingga teman-teman yang tadi masih kontrak, masih outsourcing, mereka bisa menjadi permanen, mereka bisa dilindungi oleh PKB. Jadi semakin kita hadir untuk memberikan atau sekedar berdiskusi soal keamanan kerja, semakin ingin mereka berkeinginan untuk join atau bergabung dengan union. Intinya kita harus hadir, kita harus dukung. Contohnya tadi bagaimana mengorganisir lewat termin yang disampaikan Prof. Marcelo 757, artinya 7 itu yang mendukung serikat, 5 yang menolak serikat, dan 7 lainnya adalah yang bersimpati. Intinya 80% tadi itu adalah menolak serikat, dan ini kita harus organisir, dan 20% itu adalah yang bersimpati untuk mendukung serikat. Jadi intinya SPJCT harus hadir, harus support sampai ada sebuah kesempatan bagi teman-teman untuk menjadi pekerja permanen dan dilindungi oleh PKB. Tapi kita akan, Prof. Marcelo akan menyimpan pertanyaan Billy Agung, dan kita akan melakukan diskusi lagi dalam kelas selanjutnya terkait dengan bagaimana kita memproduksi atau berjuang untuk menghasilkan sebuah aturan yang melindungi pekerja.
Agung gave me a very important opportunity to show how the working group is important, because the permanent 30-35% can be unionized right away. We have to make a special force to focus on its unionization and explanation to the other workers that it's important to be a permanent worker. On the contrary, we need support of the remaining 70%. So we should not unionize just 10% or 20% of them, showing to the bosses that we are in minority. We, unfortunately, will be out of this money, of this membership for a while, but they can contribute in other ways. But the idea is not to spread fear among these workers to unionize and to be persecuted, to be harmed by, harassed by, and in many ways being even chased by the bosses because they unionized, because they are part of the union. And the third thing is to struggle to have legislation and decent work, bringing the government to participate and showing that contract workers are less productive than permanent workers. Permanent workers are the ultimate tool for the enterprise to be good, to be strong. And you should not use labor to be a competitive value undergrowing your business, your entrepreneurship, but having permanent workers as a competitive base. These are the issues that we can discuss, but usually, and the last thing I said, what happens in Brazil? In Brazil, private ports have contractor workers. Public ports, only permanent workers. But now the bosses are trying to change legislation, so it becomes more similar to Indonesia. But we are fighting on not to happen. And in Latin America, it's the same. That's why I said that Indonesia's reality is very similar to Latin America, because we always struggling to have not just permanent, but exclusively permanent organized workers, meaning we form, We hire, we fire. We participate in all chain of these workers. This means exclusivity. And it means that the trade union must always be in the process of the labor. So the labor process must have the union within it. So I hope I was clear, Agong, that we need to discuss this more, because we need a working group to specify this in your reality, in your specific reality. But it has to be also an Indonesian reality, a Dockers reality all over Indonesia, not just in your particular enterprise or port. That's why we need unity. I said unity at the beginning because of it.
Ya, Agung memberikan sebuah contoh yang konkret terhadap pentingnya grup diskusi, bagaimana menjadikan pekerja permanen tadi yang 30-35% menjadi kekuatan atau penggerak, dan kita butuh dukungan 70% lainnya. Intinya kita harus tunjukkan terhadap sebuah dukungan dan bentuk support lainnya kepada teman-teman yang 70% belum menjadi pekerja permanen, termasuk memberikan proteksi kepada mereka. Sampai bahkan kita bisa mendorong sebuah aturan, bahkan sampai membawa isu ini kepada parlemen, sehingga stakeholders ini melihat bahwa menjadikan pekerja outsourcing menjadi permanen ini menjadi isu yang penting. Dan ini adalah isu yang bisa dimulai atau dilatih menjadi sebuah bahan diskusi sehari-hari. Di Brazil, pelabuhan swasta itu diisi oleh pekerja kontrak, sementara pelabuhan pemerintah diisi oleh pekerja permanen. Namun ada gerakan untuk menjadikan hal yang sudah established atau sudah ada di Brazil itu menjadi seperti di Indonesia. Jadi penting bukan hanya menjadi permanen, tetapi tadi yang disampaikan Marcelo adalah eksklusif permanen. Bagaimana semua tindakan industri mulai dari pada saat rekrutan sampai dengan PHK itu harus melalui serikat pekerja. Serikat pekerja harus selalu hadir atas kejadian apapun di tempat kerja, sehingga kita bisa berdiskusi lebih lanjut, lebih banyak terkait dengan realita di Indonesia ataupun di SPJCT ataupun di serikat pekerja lainnya di diskusi atau kelas selanjutnya. Satu hal yang ditekankan oleh Marcelo adalah kita butuh yang namanya persatuan.
And just to finish with this, and then we open for another day, Agung, because we are in almost finishing it. In Brazil, the 90% of the workers, they have $1,000 salary per month, so they don't pay taxes, because if you are over 5,000 reais or $1,000, you pay taxes. But the dockers are above that, around $1,500 per month. And that's why, I mean, some of them are $2,000. But that's why the bosses want to change legislation. But we are working with society and the government in order to show that prosperity in Brazil and in Latin America has to be linked with the prosperity of the strategic workers, of the dockers. Because if we are in $1,000 base, it means that we are like everybody and they will not look at us as most powerful. We need to be more powerful in order to guide. And that's why we need to submit the bosses in legislation and the government into the society and the labor movement's agenda. We need to plan to help Indonesia to plan its own economy, to project its own economy. And in order to do that, we need to build our popular power, our people's power. That's why it's important not to think about legislation without building power at the same time. We need to do both. We cannot think about salary without thinking about building power. We need to do both. And that's why your question is very important, because it's linked to our reality. The reality of the salary in Indonesia is more or less the same as in Brazil. But we are in rich and prosperous countries. That's why we must participate in this agenda, in this common agenda, and we must put pressure in our government in order to share the wealth that we produce ourselves.
Ya, untuk mengakhiri ini, Prof. Marcelo menggambarkan di Brazil 90% pekerja itu bergaji $1.000 per bulan. Untuk gaji $1.000 mereka tidak membayar pajak, tetapi lebih dari $1.000 itu membayar pajak. Namun pekerja pelabuhan bergaji di atas $1.500, bahkan ada yang sampai $2.000, sehingga manajemen atau pemilik perusahaan ingin merubah legislasi ini. Jadi menurut Marcelo, kalau disamakan menjadi $1.000, ini pekerja seperti kehilangan kekuatan. Maka pekerja pelabuhan menjadi contoh sebuah kekuatan di mata pemerintah, di mata masyarakat. Dan ini menjadi sebuah agenda penting. Bagaimana membangun kekuatan pekerja dilihat dari misalnya sisi kesejahteraan dalam bentuk remunerasi. Jadi kita tidak hanya berpikir soal gaji sebetulnya, tanpa berpikir bagaimana membangun sebuah kekuatan. Dan ini adalah realitas yang saling terhubung antara misalnya dalam hal gaji, apa yang terjadi di Indonesia dan juga terjadi di Brazil ini sangat mirip. Jadi intinya kita harus berpartisipasi, kita harus berdiskusi terkait dengan agenda yang kita hadapi secara bersama ini, dan bagaimana kita membangun sebuah gerakan, sebuah tekanan untuk bagaimana membawa kesejahteraan bagi pekerja ataupun masyarakat.
So just to finish, if the minimum salary in Brazil is $300 and 90% touch until $1,000 per month, and the dockers may touch more or less, but around that, there's something wrong with both the economy in Brazil and in Indonesia. Because if it's $1,000 per capita per month in both countries, why the minimum salary is $300 in the case of Brazil? Why 2/3 of the population have just $300 per month as a minimum salary? And that's why our future is linked with the majority of the population. Even if we get $1,000 a month or $300 as a minimum salary, we know that our economies are producing our wealth, whether in Indonesia, whether in Brazil. And this is our biggest challenge. And that's why we were discussing all these tools today, in order to get close to the legislation, close to organizing, in order to raise people's power. And giving back to you. And for me, it's all I have to say today. Thank you so much, comrades. Thank you.
Oke, sebagai penutup, Marcelo menggambarkan jika gaji minimum di Brazil $300, bukan $1.000 per bulan, berarti ada ekonomi yang salah baik di Indonesia ataupun Brazil. Kenapa harus minimum gaji $300 sementara ekonomi bergerak? Nah, inilah masa depan yang saling terhubung terkait populasi, baik itu di Brazil maupun di Indonesia. Bagaimana kita mendapatkan upah yang layak, atau dalam konteks Brazil misalnya $1.000 per bulan. Karena kita tahu bahwa ketika kita mendapatkan gaji yang layak, ekonomi bergerak dan kesejahteraan ini terbagi atau terdistribusi secara rata. Ini tantangan kita, dan kita akan semakin berdiskusi soal ini ke depan, dan bagaimana kita terus mengorganisir sehingga kekuatan pekerja semakin terbangun dan semakin meningkat. Itu saja dari saya. Terima kasih atas waktunya teman-teman. So that's all.
That's all. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Surya.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Professor
much.
Marcelo.
I believe.
Thank you, comrade.
Thank you, Furman. Thank you, Agung. And
Thank you.
thank you, Surya.
Marcelo.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
thank you.
Terima kasih, Prof. Marcelo.
Terima
I
kasih.
hope that we can evolve with these working groups, and then
Sure.
we will meet next time. Okay?
Oke, thank
See
you.
you, comrade. Thank you,
See you,
Patricia.
comrade. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Itu siapa
Thank you.
beli? Siapa itu?
Ayo, Jan.
Thank you.
Oke.